Welcome back to Turning Point Tonight, where together we are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. It's time to check in with Turning Point's White House correspondent, Monica Page. Monica joins us from the White House. A lot of stuff going on today. Can you fill us in on what you think is, well, so there's very important, serious things, and also some less serious, but still influential and impactful things. What's going on?
Yeah, let's start with some of the lighter stuff first here, Joe Bob. Well, we had Roger Goodell, NFL commissioner, in the Oval Office this afternoon with President Trump, as well as DC Mayor Muriel Bowser, which is unlikely guest as well. People did not expect either of them to be in the Oval Office this week. But essentially, the president is saying that the 2027 NFL draft will be here in Washington, D.C. on the National Mall, which is pretty big news considering the fact that last year it took place, I believe, in Michigan. This past year it just took place in Wisconsin. So naming off all these, major cities in the Midwest, but now you're bringing it here back home in President Trump's White House. So a very interesting development. Of course, DC Mayor Muriel Bowser also being there. It's such a stark contrast because back in 2020, you had the BLM Square here open. Now things have seemingly changed, especially in the football sphere. You had, players kneeling for the national anthem, it's making such a message to BLM back in 2020, but now they're in the Oval Office with the president. So that was pretty crazy this afternoon, that's for sure.
It is weird to see some of the people that were so against President Trump show up in the White House. I'm curious, and I don't know if you would know this specifically. Did Muriel Bowser take a page out of Gretchen Whitmer's book and just cover her face in the Oval Office?
Not that I saw, but I do want to mention that, Joe Bob. I'm glad that you brought that up because seeing, these Democrat leaders in the Oval Office who at one time really saw an enemy from President Trump are now in the White House meeting with him. So this goes to show the president is open to conversations with just about anybody. It's not only those of his own party. You've got Democrat leaders across the country essentially wanting to go see him and wanting to visit him.
It's almost as if the libs around the country, especially in seats of power, were lying the whole time about how evil of a man he is. Monica, to some of the more, I guess, serious, but it's nothing new. There's a new illegal immigration initiative to try and promote people self-deporting. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so of course, as we know, the CBP Home app is now with the DHS is coining this latest initiative to get illegal aliens to self-deport themselves out of this country back to where they came from. Of course, under Joe Biden's presidency is the CBP Go app, which they used or had trouble using because it was open to such errors like malfunctioning and crashing to come into this country instead of appointments to come into the country, but it really didn't work. So now this Trump administration is taking initiatives to get these illegal aliens back home. And they're actually offering an incentive of a $1,000 stipend or incentive to deport back to their home country. We know that when you break down the numbers to arrest, detain, and deport each illegal alien, it's about $17,000. So this will really give people the chance to go home without having to face any more serious repercussions than they would if they were to just have stayed.
Totally. Last thing I want to ask you about the mainstream media is in just full meltdown mode over the announcement of President Trump saying, "Hey, we're going to open up Alcatraz." Now, I don't actually know how serious, if he's just yanking their chain or if he's actually going to open it up to criminals across the country. God knows we need more prisons to house all the people that are breaking our laws. How serious is this? Do you think there's a pathway to actually make it happen? What's the White House saying about this?
Yeah, I think there definitely could be a pathway to making Alcatraz become, where a lot of these violent illegal criminal aliens would go. Of course, we already know they're already in Guantanamo Bay. They're being sent off there, but they could end up also being in Alcatraz. They also know that American criminals, the most violent American criminals, could also end up there. We know that Alcatraz, as of right now, it's been shut down to be a museum, and it housed about 250 to about 275 criminals at that time. But given that Alcatraz is a federal prison, the president can kind of use that as leverage to essentially make this happen and use the fact that it's a federal prison to really check off another box on his wish list and making this Trump agenda come true. So we could see this become a thing, of course. And, we know our prisons at home could become overrun. Why don't open up Alcatraz? It's very hard to escape. I'm sure the conditions there are not the best, but it's, listen, you might as well just make use of it, right?
Yeah, it feels like either way, whether it's a publicity stunt and a head fake to get the media all riled up, which he loves to do, and I appreciate that about him, or if it's an actual, hey, we're going to open up this other prison. Either way, seems good to me. Monica
Mhm.
Page, Turning Point's White House correspondent, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Joe Bob.
The New York Times had a piece over the weekend about Senator Fetterman's mental health. Now, this has been no secret. He checked himself into a rehab at Walter Reed in 2023. But the point that the New York Times and subsequently the people that are leaking to the New York Times, his former staff, former chief of staff, is fascinating. The point that they're trying to make. They're effectively trying to say, well, the reason we knew that Senator Fetterman was losing his mental ability because some of his policies started becoming more conservative. I kid you not, that is the point that the New York Times, I believe, is trying to make. Let's bring our panel back. Andrew Gruel and Alex Stein are here to comment on this. Andrew, we'll start with you. The New York Times had again, big, long article about the concerns that his staff has. They even, let me read you a quote, or at least categorize a quote, or characterize a quote, saying that his behavior has been erratic. He even bought a gun. God forbid. That clearly is a sign of mental decline that the staff is worried about. Your thoughts?
Well, keep in mind that the crux of this article was from an email that his staffer wrote well over a year ago. So they've known about this and they've held on to it. So the reason they're bringing it out right now is because they're trying to go after Fetterman. Well, funny is it, somewhat ironic, but not really to us, that he was at peak Democrat acceptance when he was virtually brain dead after the stroke. And now that he's actually gotten healthier and he's starting to think logically, well, then they don't like him anymore. And so it goes to show that the apex of being a Democrat is right after you have a stroke when you're effectively brain dead.
I was going to say, yeah. So people who can't think tend to be at the top of the totem pole in the Democrat Party. Alex, again, John Fetterman, I think a lot of us, while he was running, would have called him a freaking socialist, probably because he has said as much himself, it seems like. But nowadays, kind of starting to surprise a lot of people. It's been happening for a while. Do you think the push to belittle his opinion in stuff like this is going to continue the more, I guess, conservative beliefs he believes to have?
Well, I have teased John Fetterman a lot for his outfits and the fact that, he doesn't, really hold up much decorum when he is presenting himself, as a senator. But when it comes to John Fetterman, we have to remember that he is from Pennsylvania. You know who's in Pennsylvania? Philadelphia Eagles fans. I mean, if the people in Philly the point I'm trying to make is these are normal people. These, we all try to think there's like libtards and crazy leftists. These are people that like the Philadelphia Eagles. These are people like the Philadelphia Phillies, and he actually relates to those people. So him being just a little bit more moderate, of course, they're going to attack his ability to think, and they're going to say that he's, losing his cognitive ability, which in reality, I think he's just the same guy. He's always kind of been an idiot, but his true colors are just coming out more, and he's just a normal, everyday guy. He's obviously a victim of his own success. He doesn't want to be a politician. He can't even put on nice pants or a jacket. So he probably hates having to go in that building and see everybody dressed all nice. Yeah, I'm saying, Chef Gruel, I admit that. You go in those councils, you want to look nice. You're conducting serious business. Could you imagine you're at the top political position and you're in sweatpants? Mm-hmm. You would have to. The only reason you would do that is if you're a little mentally ill. So I don't disagree that he's got a little screw loose, but I think he's a normal guy and probably not a bad one at that.
One of the first comments I got at a city council meeting that was directed specifically to me was an older gentleman who said, "Well, I don't like you and I don't agree with you, Mr. Gruel. I appreciate that you wore a suit."
It means everything. That's why I wear a suit, because I'm a total freak. But if I wear the suit, they give me a little more respect. I don't understand why this guy wouldn't just go to a big and tall store and order 10 suits that fit him. He would get so much more respect. But he doesn't have he doesn't have the self-esteem. There is something inside of him. I don't know if it's a cognitive issue, but he does probably suffer from depression. Because, I mean, Chef Gruel, you go to that nice restaurant. Could you imagine? I'm sure you have repeat customers that are super wealthy that dress down. That their whole gimmick is they don't want to dress nice. But when you're conducting serious business, like going to a wedding or a funeral, there's sometimes you have to dress nice, whether you want to or not. And I would think being a senator, you would have to dress nice, right? I mean, isn't that insane that he's wearing that type of those clothing, for serious governmental business?
Yeah.
The depression draws back to the wife. Another episode for another time. I'm telling you, there's something going on there.
The cognitive decline, I think, hits it on the head, and both his wife specifically, because she's the real crazy one. Speaking of cognitive decline, the California voter populace overall seems to be in cognitive decline, continuing to elect the people that they elect. We all remember the Palisades fires, terrible, horrible tragedy, and we all remember one specific thing about that. Well, the the reservoir at the top, the Santa Ynez Reservoir, the 117 million gallon complex, was empty very, very quickly. Well, it's empty yet again because they keep finding leaks in the reservoir. Alex, I want to ask you about this. There's been a lot of talk about this reservoir in California. None of it seems to have gotten any better. They were warning that in January 2024 that there were leaks in this, a year before this fire happens, and nobody did anything about it. And unfortunately, thousands of people paid the consequences. Any sign that this is going to get resolved from like a populist perspective?
I know everybody in the comments will be like, you're an idiot, but California is the only state that can run out of water when they're next to the ocean. And I get it, that was salt water and they can't use it, this and that. But seriously, California used to be the greatest state, and it really still should be the greatest state, but it's mismanagement like this where they don't even have water to put out the fire. So that's why I'm empathetic, and that's why the state really is lucky not to kiss your derriere that they have people like Chef Andrew Gruel that actually, put in the work that help these citizens, because it just seems like they're just so incompetent. The people that are running California, do they want it to fail? I don't know why they would. I just think that they're not good at their job and they care more about social justice issues than actually support and safety of their citizens.
Alex, I think you're right. Governor Gruel does have a pretty nice ring to it, auditory-wise. Andrew, the California has not built any meaningful water storage in over 50 years. At some point, does anybody start to realize, hey, we keep talking about this water storage and you can only water your lawns once a day or once a week, and you have to keep your showers to a 30-second minimum. But at the same time, if nobody's actually doing anything to increase the water storage, is that gonna get through to folks of like, hey, maybe they're not actually taking this stuff seriously?
That's the thing that I wonder about is that these middle of the road Californians who are just walking through World War III in California, and I mean that figuratively, and they don't recognize, because at the end of the day, it's just money. All of this comes down to money. We don't have the money. Why don't we have the money? Because the money has been spent on fake projects, Ponzi schemes that have enriched a select few at the top and through the bureaucracy as the Democrats have galvanized their power. 15 years of Democrat rule now, and the state has completely fallen apart. This reservoir is a metaphor for the brains of those in charge of California. It's always empty.
Yeah, unfortunately, that seems to be the case. I wish I didn't have to live in the worst-run laboratory of democracy, but I guess somebody has to do it. Alex, hopefully people in Texas take note and don't do what California has done. Don't California my Texas, I believe they say. Primetime Alex Stein and Chef City Councilman Andrew Gruel, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate you taking the time. We'll have you back as soon as we can.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Coming up here on Turning Point tonight, we've got an awesome clip from Alex Clark's Culture Apothecary podcast. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this.